guys, welcome back to While You Were Cleaning. Today I have a really exciting Bumblebee decor DIY video to share with you. I tried to use a lot of affordable products to put together today's DIYs. I have shared a bee decor DIY video in the past, and I'll link that up in the corner here for you. And then at the end of this video, so if you want more ideas after watching today's video, make sure you go and check out that video as well. So I'm really excited about today's DIYs. I also have some free printables to share with you as well, and I'll tell you about those a little bit later on in the video. Let's go ahead and get started with these DIYs. I'm starting today's first DIY with this bug that I found in the toy section at Dollar Tree. And honestly, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a bee or a fly, but for the sake of today's video, we are going to say that it is a bee. And I wanted to spray paint this gold, so I'm using this Rust-Oleum metallic gold color. This is one of my favorite gold shades. And I'm just going to start with the bottom side of the bee and just give it one good coat. And then I flipped it over after it dried and gave the top of it one good coat of gold as well. And I just only did one coat on this. I didn't have to come back and do a second coat. Then I'll be using this photo frame. They have these that you can see through the center. So I'll be using a 4x6 one, and I just removed that back piece of glass that had the paper on it and just left it with one piece of glass in there. And then to the bottom of this gold bumblebee, I'm going to be adding some hot glue so that we can glue it onto the center of this frame. I also added it to the legs so that I can make sure that they stay in place as well. I really love this little project and how it turned out. And maybe it's a little bit morbid, but I just really like the way that this project looks. It's a nice high-end look with the gold with the black frame. Next, I wanted to make some coasters using some 4x4 tiles that I picked up at the hardware store. I picked up 4 of these for 15 cents each. And on the back of these, I'm going to add some felt. This is some black felt that I picked up in a roll from Dollar Tree. And this will just keep it from scratching any surfaces that you put it on. I used some hot glue to add the felt to the back of my tiles. You can also use whatever color tiles or felt that you want for this project. For the pictures I'll be adding to my tiles, I created these printables. I chose descriptive words that I thought went well with different drinks that you might use these coasters for. And these printables are free for you to use. The links will be down in the description box. I did them in a PDF form and in a picture form so you can print them however you would like. You just have to trace around the tile around these different little pictures so that you can get them to the right size, and then go ahead and trim those out so that you can glue them onto your tiles. I picked up this Mod Podge with the blue label from Walmart. It is dishwasher safe, so I think it's a little bit more water resistant, but I have used regular Mod Podge in the past for a project like this and it worked just fine. You'll want to put a layer of this glue onto your tile and then onto the back of your graphic that you'll be adding to the tile, and then go ahead and smooth out any bubbles that might be between the paper and your tile. I originally printed these pictures onto regular printer paper, and I didn't actually like the finished look. Once I added another layer of glue on top of my graphic, it started creating a lot of bubbles, and so I went back and I removed these and used cardstock instead, and you can see here the finished product is a lot smoother. So this is after one coat of the glue, and then I went ahead and added a second coat as well. Make sure you get all those edges so that you don't have any water seeping through along the edge of your tiles. You'll want to add 2 to 3 coats of Mod Podge on top of your papers, and here you can see how they turned out using that cardstock instead of the paper. I didn't have any issues with bubbles when I used that thicker paper, so I would definitely suggest doing that. Next, I have an adorable beehive project to share with you. I'll be using one of each of these sizes of terracotta pots that you can find at Dollar Tree. And on this first larger pot, I used a piece of twine and I double knotted it with a loop at the end. Went ahead and fed that up through the hole in the top of the pot, so I had something to hang it with, and I glued that in place. And then I'll be using some of this nautical rope to cover this pot. I started right around that opening at the top of the pot, and I just added glue and just kept spinning the pot, adding glue, and then pressing that rope down in place. Once you get to that outer rim, then you'll just start working down the side of your pot as well. You could honestly do this project with any containers that you might already have on hand. You could use an old ball jar, or even something as simple as a yogurt or a sour cream container. Those would work just as well. They have a very similar shape to this pot. I really do like the way that it turned out using this pot, but you really don't see the container underneath once it's covered with the rope. So if you don't want to go out and buy some little pots, you could easily just recycle something from your home. This rope had a few little flaws and parts that would stick out on it, so I just trimmed those off as I went. And then when I got down to the end here, I went ahead and I cut this rope at an angle so that it didn't have any part that was sticking up a little bit farther there at the bottom. So just cut a little bit on an angle there and then finish that off by gluing it down. Next, I wanted to create what looked like an opening on my beehive. So I used some of that black felt and I cut out a small circle, and then I cut out rope that would go around the edge of the circle. So just went ahead and cut something that was just a little bit bigger than what my black circle was, and then created a circle out of that by hot gluing the ends together. And then I went ahead and glued that black circle onto the side of my beehive, and then added this little round rope circle to the side of my beehive with some hot glue as well. I made a second one of these with one of the smaller pots, so I used this thinner rope for that one, and I think it worked out a lot better than trying to use that thick rope on this tiny little pot. So this thin rope is a new product that I saw recently in my Dollar Tree store, and so hopefully you'll have it in your store sometime soon. You could also use something maybe like a thicker twine on this smaller beehive, and that would look good as well. And I just followed all the same steps to create the smaller beehive as I did the larger one, so you can see the difference in the size here and how those turned out. Next, I'm going to make some bumblebees out of these wooden beads that I picked up in a pack from a thrift store. You could also use some wooden beads from Dollar Tree for this project. And then I'll also be using some of this sheer ribbon. So I cut about a 2-inch piece off of this ribbon, and then I went ahead and cut two because I was making 2 bumblebees. This is some about 1.5-inch wide ribbon that I got in a Michael's grab bag, but you can pick up some sheer ribbon from Dollar Tree as well. So I folded it almost in thirds and then glued down with just one little dot, and then I used this really thin wire to twist it nice and tight in the center. So these are the wings for the bumblebee. Next, I'm going to take one of my smaller beads and I'm going to thread it down those 2 wire pieces. So now where the wires are coming out is the front of the head of the bumblebee, and those wires are going to become the antenna for the bumblebee. So don't cut those off, just glue it in place there. And then go ahead and turn the bead over. Back here where the wings are, you're going to go ahead and hot glue the larger bead in place on the back of the bumblebee. Next, I'm using some of this mustard yellow and then black yarn from Dollar Tree. You can use yarn or ribbon, whatever you might have on hand. And then we're going to cover this bumblebee in the yarn to make it black and yellow. On the front of your bumblebee head, go ahead and push those antennae back. We're going to cover up that first little part of them with some yarn. And I'm just going to add the yarn right to the hole that's on the front of the bead there. And then we're just going to work in a circle, twisting the yarn around and adding some hot glue onto the bead, and then just work all the way around the bead over and over again until you can get it covered with this black yarn. When I repeated this to create a second bumblebee, I went ahead and I added the wings and that wire onto my smaller bead, and then I covered both of my beads individually with the yarn first before attaching the two beads together, and I found that to be a little bit easier. Once I got to the top of the bumblebee's head, I folded those antennae forward and then continued covering the head bead with this yarn and just went behind those antennae for the last few strokes around the bead. I started with yellow yarn on my larger bead and went around about 3 times. How many times you go around really just depends on what size beads you are using, but I went around about 3 times on this one and then cut it off so that I could start again with the black yarn, and I just tried to keep all of the endings of my yarn on the bottom side of the bumblebee so that you wouldn't be able to see where one yarn ends and the other one begins. As I was in the process of working on this, it actually kind of looked a mess because we all know that hot glue creates little glue strings all over the place, or it would seep through between the yarn. But don't worry if yours looks a mess. It is pretty easy to clean up. You can pull off those little strings. You can use your scissors to trim off any glue that might seep out. I was surprised with how well it cleaned up in the end. And then once you get down to your last little bit of black yarn that you're going to be adding, I did ball up some black yarn and add it into the center of my bead. And then that worked as kind of the base to finish spiraling this black yarn around the bottom and just finishing off the project. The last step of this bee is to finish off the antenna. So I took a skewer and I spiraled that wire around it so that it would have these little curlicue antenna sticking off of its head. You can see here how those look. And then I took some black yarn and I tied it in a nice tight knot. I doubled it over first and then tied it so it would make a good size little knot there. And then I cut those knots out of the yarn. You can see here I just have 2 little balls there. And then I just slipped those onto the top of the antenna. And here are how my adorable little bumblebees turned out. You can make these in all different sizes depending on your sizes of beads. I made a bumblebee DIY video in the past and did create a little bee in that video out of pom-poms. So I did say I'm going to be linking that at the end, but I think I like these ones better. Next, I'm going to use 3 of these Hexagon mirrors. You can find these at Dollar Tree. They kind of come and go in the store. They also have some really cute little hexagon decor pieces out right now. But I'm going to use 3 of these and attach them all together using these popsicle sticks to create one larger mirror. I cut about 1 inch off of each of these popsicle sticks to make them the right length to fit in this space here, and then I added some hot glue along each side and covered those up with these popsicle sticks to hold the 2 mirrors together, and did this along each of the 3 seams. And of course these are the larger popsicle sticks. You could probably use some of the smaller popsicle sticks as well, maybe just changing them into the other direction. And then on the front here, you can see there's a little bit of a gap between the mirrors after the back is glued together. So I wanted to fill that in, so I added some hot glue to that and then just added some masking tape to hold it together while the hot glue dried, just to make sure that it didn't split back open there. And make sure that you do pull those 2 mirrors apart just a little bit so that you don't have glue seeping out the top between the 2 mirrors. Here you can see how that one turned out. And of course, if you find a bunch of these amazing hexagon mirrors there at Dollar Tree, you could glue several of them together using the same method. Just add popsicle sticks to help secure them together a little bit better. Lastly, I have some printables to share with you, and I just wanted to show you this black and gold mirror that I found there at Dollar Tree. I really love this one, and I think it goes so well with Bumblebee decor. Now these printables here are the ones that I put together for you. You can find the links to them down in the description box. They are all in one file. You can get them in PDF or in picture form. And these are just the designs that I put together for this video, and they are free for you to use. The paper that these are printed on is a little bit bigger than an 8x10 frame, so it's regular 8.5x11 sheet of paper. So you'll just want to take the insert from the inside of your 8x10 frame, and you can lay that on top of your picture and cut around the outside to trim it down. Here I wanted to share with you how one of those printables looked in this black and gold frame. They have this frame in white and gold as well, but I really love the way that the black and gold looks. I also wanted to share how Dollar Tree does get in some other bumblebee or honey themed items there in the store, and I'll share a few of those with you in a minute, but also just pairing some of these items with some black and yellow flowers is another great way just to bring those colors into your decor. This candle is one that I found just a little bit ago at Dollar Tree. I also have found some trinket trays there. I really love this hexagon shaped one. It's one of my favorite ones that I found, I believe, before Christmas. So if you really love bumblebees, just make sure that you check all year long. And then this one here I found in this black and a white color recently out with the Mother's Day items. Okay, so those are all of the DIYs that I have to share with you today. I really hope that you have enjoyed this video and that it's given you some affordable ideas that you could use to add to your own bumblebee decor. Let me know down in the comments which of these DIYs was your favorite.